So my name is Frank Sohn. I'm the founder of Novus CPQ Consulting, which is focused really 100% on the CPQ space, right? So we also have the CPQ podcast where I interview weekly leaders from CPQ vendors, system integrators, customers. I also had researchers on before from universities and stuff like that. So I've been working in this area now for the last almost 30 years. The content in general, I think, is good. It's good to look at it. I don't know anyone who's making their decision really based on what they see in these reports. It's just one source of information. It's too generic so that you can really make a decision based on this. But I think before you write the short list, before you engage someone, have a look at it, inform yourself a little bit. And the reports are typically good. Mark Lewis, for example, at Gartner, I think he is doing a good job. So have a look at it, but it's not enough to make a decision, right? And just because I leave out someone doesn't mean I don't appreciate them, but I don't want to promote my competitors too much, right? So it's what I would say right now is where I would see two trends. One is to add more pricing capabilities in general, right? So that is not just price optimizations and things like that, right? Is also, when you think a little bit simpler, but still very helpful, is how do you display promotions in your product configurator, right? So how do you inform your users about promotions and things like that, right? So that I think is a very interesting area. In general, more the pricing, I didn't want to push just promotions. You could also add rebate management here and a couple of other things that are coming up. But I think that is more, people see more value in this in general, right? So that's an interesting area to pay attention to. Then the other one is definitely data analytics, right? So and that takes on a whole different form. So some vendors would prefer they just collect the data, then they give it to some business information analysis tool, right? So where you can visualize the results or provide guidance and stuff like that. But in general, you should expect to get smarter advice within the tool while you use the solution. First of all, so that's a very important point from my perspective, right? So because a system implementer can make or break the best solution, right? So I've seen many times a very valid, perfectly fine CPQ solution badly implemented doesn't work, right? So a system implementer is very important. I would also recommend everyone, when you select the system integrator, you should have a little process for that. That should not be weeks. You should really look who you pick to do that, because that makes a big difference. So very big point from my point of view, right? So what's a difference maker here is two things. One, you have to have experienced CPQ resources. So especially right now with the current lack of experienced resources, that's easier said than done, right? So you have to have really the best resources. So here it's important to mention the biggest names in the consulting business don't necessarily have the best resources in this area, right? So that's very important to keep in mind. So you have to have experienced resource. And when I say that, I'm not talking about someone who did a couple of implementations over 2 years, right? So that's fine. That's perfectly fine. And in this current market, that is experience. It's valuable experience. But you have to have some people who have done this for a little bit longer, who know some of the pitfalls, because they could become very quickly very expensive, right? So therefore, I think it's very important to have these people and then really find out, will you have these people in your project once the project starts, right? So I don't want to have a reference where I can see, oh, I have 3 very experienced resources, but when my project starts, they are just spending 10 hours a week on that, right? It could be enough. You have to talk. Anyway, that's very important. The next one, which I think makes a big difference, is the relationship with the CPQ vendor, right? So, and since you're working with Salesforce also, right? So I would say that makes a big difference, because Salesforce works with a ton of different system implementers, right? So the better the relationship is, the more help you can expect, because the way I see it is, Salesforce is a large company. You have lots of different customers. In order to keep them happy, you have to pay attention to a lot of different voices. You will pay more attention to larger voices because they have more influence on your business, right? So in this case, that is a size question, right? So it can, in some cases, you can make that up. If you have tons of experienced resource, you may not need that much of a good relationship because you can do it yourself. But in general, I've seen when projects run into some issues, you need additional attention from the vendor. If you're just one of many system implementers, there's a good chance things just take longer, which costs you more time. So if you have a larger system implementer who has more relationships, who can get the vendor resources involved, the right resource involved early on, that makes a ton of difference. So these two things I would definitely pay attention to.